Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the PC Boiz Podcast. I am your host, Logan Locke. So as you guys can tell, finally got my PC set up. I got a new microphone, same boom arm and stuff, but I upgraded the microphone. Green screen's back up, OBS is working, got a new monitor, new gaming PC, so we're all set to go. But today we are going to be doing the Daredevil Born Again Season 1, Episode 3, full review, so, stay tuned for that. But of course, I will have all the links to our socials and whatnot in the description down below. But without further ado, let's get into the Episode 3 breakdown and review. So, before I get into the spoilers part, as per usual, I thought Episode 3 was the best episode we've gotten thus far. Even though there's no action, I loved it. I thought the way that they did the courtroom drama stuff, it felt very much akin to Season 1 and 2, especially Season 2 with the Punisher stuff. Obviously, because there's less episodes in Daredevil Born Again than any of the Netflix seasons, they had to trim things down massively in terms of, time spent in the courtroom. So instead of having like 2 or 3 episodes dealing with the courtroom stuff, they made it into one episode, but it was so well done and so well written. And Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, they made him, such a good character. Even though he's only in like 2 episodes of the series, they made him such a good character. And the way that they wrote him was very well done, made him very empathetic, and especially, the actor who played him just did an amazing job. It's really unfortunate that he passed away a little bit after the filming of his parts of the series anyways. But it was an amazing job that he did, definitely bringing that character to life. But without getting into spoilers, my final episode review, score of this would have to be like an 8.5 out of 10. It was a really well done episode. Definitely one of the best drama points that we've gotten. But now I'm going to be going into the full spoiler territory into this episode. So if you have not watched episode 3 yet, do not go further with this review. But without further ado, going further into it, so I've watched this episode 3 times now at the point of recording this. I have to say, absolutely love the whole drama in this entire episode. This episode is basically Matt Murdock and the trial of Hector Ayala instead of anything Wilson Fisk. Wilson Fisk took a very big backseat in this episode. Him and Vanessa were in counseling. Basically, there's this little buildup of Vanessa paying off the crime families or whatever in the background, and Fisk doesn't want anything to do with that at all. So he's kind of being like, I hope we don't get to a point where I don't trust you. So Wilson Fisk definitely in the series, especially for this episode, was very much in the background, but they're still building up his character in that aspect. But the trial of Hector Ayala also very much highlights going against the promise that Fisk made, which was, instilling a strong police force, getting rid of vigilantes, which was one of the big things he ran on. And with knowing that, having Hector Ayala be acquitted at the end of the episode very much goes against the promise he made to the people of New York. So he ends up having BB Urick come in and do a little interview with him at the very, very end of the episode. Matt Murdock, was trying to prove Hector Ayala innocent, and so he's going through the court trial. He even, has a little back and forth with Officer Powell, who was the guy that he beat up at the end of episode 2, who was on the stand in episode 3, and basically he was saying he didn't know Nikki Torres, which was a informant that the NYPD was working with. In episode 2, the guy that Hector saved. And essentially he said he didn't know him when he was on the stand, and Matt Murdock is, trying to get Nikki Torres to the trial to be able to testify against Powell. So essentially the cops put out a hit on him and try to stop him from getting to the courthouse, but Nikki Torres does end up getting to the courthouse, gets put on the stand, except he does not go through with telling the truth about what happened. Matter of fact, he backs down and says, no, I was home, I wasn't at the platform in which, or the subway platform that I was attacked in. So the only witness that Matt Murdock had had to essentially win the case goes, shit up. And it doesn't end up working. So that night, they basically have to come up with a plan of, well, let's put Hector on the stand, have him recount the events of that night and what happened. And then Matt Murdock decides to do something which we'll get into a little bit later, which is one of my more negative points of the video, where he outs the identity of the White Tiger, basically taking like this Hail Mary shot to win the case trial because they have nothing else to go with. But it also does play into the court case fact because he's like, well, if, we have these police reports where, the police talk about the fact that the White Tiger helped them intervene and stop criminals, save their lives, and other innocent people that have their lives saved by the White Tiger as well. So we have all these, people put on the stand to basically say, White Tiger saved my life, he did all these things, he helped the police, and Matt uses that as the defense to being like, why would Hector attack police officers unprovoked in the middle of the night for no good reason when he's helped officers in the past and helped all these innocent people? And then the plaintiff, or the, person that's, I guess fighting for the police officer that was killed on the train tracks that night, he basically said that, Hector Ayala maybe did a lot of good things, but good people are not incapable of doing bad things, and bad people are not incapable of doing good things. So he does make a solid point in that to try to sway people back, and then he goes in depth about how, you don't die when you get hit by the train and what happens to your body, to more of like a guilt trip kind of route. And even the judge is sitting there, telling Matt, like, you lectured me, this was in episode 2, you lectured me about, like, good ethics and, what I'm supposed to do as, a judge, and then all of a sudden you basically go back on everything that you preached. And, of course, Matt was like, well, somehow they got to my witness, my key witness in the trial, so I had to do a Hail Mary. And the judge basically says, well, because you decided to out the identity of White Tiger, people are going to gun for him, right? Like, they're going to go for his head now that they know his identity. So it's one of those big things. And then, of course, so we go through the trial. Hector's acquitted on all charges, all the way from first-degree murder down to manslaughter. He's found innocent, and he gets to walk free. And Wilson Fisk is presumably somebody that orders the death of Hector, because at the very end of the episode, we, see Hector suit up, and, he's patrolling the streets again, and then all of a sudden, a guy wearing a Punisher vest, is waiting for him at the end of an alley, and he walks out in front of him and gets shot in the head, point blank, and the episode ends. So that's basically the recounting of what happened. Hector dying was a very sad moment because the way that they built his character and the way that he was portrayed was done so well. But let's talk about a few major issues I did have with this episode. While I enjoyed the writing and it was a very well done episode in terms of, them being in a courtroom drama and doing the courtroom stuff, they did a great job with that. But my major issue with this is that, first of all, the White Tiger doesn't even get to do a fight scene. The only fighting we've seen the White Tiger do was the same clip played on the TV twice, and that was it. We never got to see the White Tiger actually suit up and fight, not once in the series, which was a big bummer in my opinion. So it felt like kind of a waste to his character where they use him for 2 episodes, do the court case, and I understand that this is probably going to motivate Matt to go back into being Daredevil, because in this episode, him and, Matt and Hector have this back and forth about, that being the White Tiger's a calling. He doesn't choose to do this, it chose him. So very much playing back and forth with like how Matt feels about being Daredevil, and his death is obviously going to cause Daredevil to come back into the fray, maybe in episode 4, definitely probably episode 5 if not, because by that point you're over halfway through the season. But Matt Murdock is definitely going to have to come to terms with that. Then the biggest point of writing that I had with this episode was Matt Murdock outing the White Tiger's identity. Now, for those of you that watch She-Hulk, Matt Murdock made the claim in his lawsuit with, Jennifer Walters, her client, who was Frogman, and then Luke Jacobson, the guy that made his suit, is that, Luke Jacobson's, identity can't be outed because he's making, superhero suits for superpowered individuals, and there are people that want to hurt those people, and their identities need to be protected. And then he goes out and outs a vigilante and his identity. And it's like, so Matt preached one thing in She-Hulk when he was in that court case, which is canon to the MCU, even though they're not mentioning much to do with She-Hulk. But then doing this in this season, it just seems very hypocritical of Matt and kind of out of the blue that he's revealing the identity of a superhero, despite the fact that he himself in the past has said, no, we can't out the identity of, superheroes or people that assist superheroes. So for me, it's like, it feels like a kind of an oxymoron. And it goes against what you preached in the prior episode. So for me, that was like a big part of the writing where I'm like, I don't agree with that. I don't like how Matt did that. And I understand they had to do it to, number one, get White Tiger to be freed in terms of winning the court case, and that leading to him, getting killed, and then Matt, and that leading Matt into wanting to don Daredevil again, and the city needing him. I get the story reasons for them building to that, but it's so contrived and it's so stupid because Matt Murdock went against the whole outing vigilantes' identities in She-Hulk just to do it here. And it seems out of character for Matt, is what I'm trying to say. And I get that at this point in time, Matt is not Daredevil and hasn't taken on that mantle and doesn't plan to. So I understand at the current moment that, Matt's not seeing it the same way because he's not currently doing the superhero gig. But it's still one of those things where it's like, it still seems very contradictory, So those are my major complaints about the episode, is those two, story decisions. Matt outing the identity of White Tiger and not really getting White Tiger even in a single fight scene. So those are my major critiques of episode 3. Outside of that, everything was very well done. Now let's talk about the audience, or should I say how many people watched Daredevil Born Again when it first started, and what this weekly episodic release schedule is going to do to the series. So the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again aired with only 7.5 million views. That is less than The Acolyte and Agatha All Along, which I would argue are both worse shows than Daredevil Born Again. I heard Agatha was good, but I don't watch, witchcraft stuff, because obviously of my faith and stuff like that. But also, from those that I heard it was good from, that had watched the series, Daredevil is more established than Agatha, I would argue, in the comics and on the TV side of things, that I would think Daredevil would, have a bigger audience pool. Now, I know that there's a lot of factors that go into this, from the fact that it's a rated TV mature show, so not as many kids are watching it, the fact that, it's a series that's, already kind of fighting an uphill battle because, it's underneath the Disney branding and the Marvel Studios branding, and right now those two brands don't have a very good perception behind them because Marvel hasn't put out much good at all in the past, 5 years, ever since the end of Endgame. There's been a few good projects, but mostly mediocre to really bad projects. It's not as bad as the level of, Star Wars or something, but it's still not great, and they're still having to fight that uphill battle. And also it's having to fight against the Netflix series. And if you're holding Daredevil Born Again to the Netflix series standard, it doesn't live up to that standard, and it won't live up to that standard. And while I'm enjoying the show, and I think it's a very well-written show and very well done, and by far the best thing Marvel's given us in a long time, personally speaking, I can understand why people might not want to watch it if they feel like it's not as good as the Netflix stuff, or even close to being worth the watch as the Netflix series. But with that being said, I have some interesting statistics for you. So I'm on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't used Rotten Tomatoes in a long time. Majorly because I couldn't really use my PC and screen share and stuff like that. But now that I got a new PC, I can. But taking a look at Daredevil. So episode 1 had an 85% tomato review score. Okay, 85%. Going to episode 2, it's 85%. So the first 2 episodes were both relatively the same. Now, if you want me to rank the episodes in how good they are, 1, 2, 3. I think as this series moves on, it gets better as things move forward. Now, episode 3, we have a 90% on the tomato meter. Now, according to this is kind of relatively to my own personal ranking, but the reason I think episode 1 is the weakest is because, you kill Foggy off, you exit Karen out of the show right away, and ultimately, right, when we talk about the Daredevil series, ultimately, because you're throwing the two major characters that people care about, out of the gate in the beginning of the series, killing one of them off, throwing new characters in there, characters that we're not familiar with, not established to, and with the 1 year time jump being like, oh yeah, these people are all really close and stuff. They're doing more of a, we're telling it to you, not showing it to you, but we want it to be shown. In the original Daredevil series, in season 1, you saw Foggy, Karen grow in their relationships with Matt and the struggles that they had, and they showed it to you, and that's why it was very felt. But it's hard to believe that McDuffie is Matt's like buddy best friend a year after Foggy's death when we don't see it because of that time jump. So you get the new characters thrown at you, but there's no build to them being friends. It's just, oh, they're friends. So that's kind of the major thing going against the new characters, is that time jump and them just being thrown into the picture while removing the old parts of the picture. We know Karen and Foggy are coming back for season 2. I don't know if that's in a present tense thing and they're going to be like, Foggy faked his death, Karen's coming back to New York, or if they're going to use them for flashbacks. I'm not sure about that yet, but we know they are coming back to some degree in season 2. Now, with that being said, the writing for episode 2 felt more a true to form return back to the Netflix series. And also with episode 3, it's the same ordeal. The writing feels more in line with the Netflix series, episodes 2 and 3. And episode 1 was just basically, here's a time jump. Old characters are dead / kicked out of the picture. Here's new characters. The CGI fight scene in the beginning looked a little wonky. It looked fine, but it was definitely a little off-putting. And then in episode 2, when we got that fight scene at the very end, it was literally, in line with the Netflix series. And I said that in my first 2 episodes review from the other week. So the major issue with Daredevil Born Again is it's fighting an uphill battle, but I think as the season goes on, the writing gets better, the story gets better. And my major issue with the release schedule is not for me personally, but let's take the average audience member. When you're going 2 to 3 full episodes outside of the first 15 minutes and the very ending of episode 2, there's really been no action in Daredevil Born Again. First 15 minutes there is, and there was a little bit at the end of episode 2, and if you want to consider, Hector getting shot in the head as, action, okay, but there hasn't been any action in this series. And if you're just the average viewer and you want action, waiting week after week with no action is going to turn some people away from the show. So I think going into season 2, they need to think about adding some kind of action into each episode, even if it's small, just to keep the viewers there. And I understand, being somebody who watched the Netflix series, there would be many episodes with no action, and it would mainly be a drama piece. But the major difference is you had all the episodes released on one single day, so you could binge the entire series. So if there was no action in 1 or 2 episodes, it didn't matter because you could continue to watch it, and the story would just continue to feed you in. But when you're waiting a week with no action, it's going to turn a lot of people away because it's not like you can go to the next episode. And it makes sense why they're dropping 2 episodes on week 5. They're dropping episodes 5 and 6. And it makes sense why, because, through these first few weeks here, or 3 weeks of it's 2 weeks of 1 week dripped episodes, there's not much action. And if you want my opinion, I think they should have double dropped episode 3 and 4. Because episode 2 didn't have much action, 3 doesn't have any action. So if episode 4 doesn't have action, we're going to start to have a little bit of issues, and that will be a critique of next week if we have no action, no Daredevil, no nothing in episode 4, because we're basically at the half point of the series. Episode 5 is a little past halfway, episode 4 is a little bit before. Because you're doing 9 episodes, there is no direct middle point. Episodes 4 and 5 are your middle points. So if there is no action in episode 4, that will be a major critique of mine going into the next episode. But the writing was phenomenal. This was a very good episode, very heartfelt, very gut-wrenching. Like I said, 8.5, 8 would be like my review range in terms of scoring it. And it had no action. But yeah, if Daredevil keeps up with this writing, I think it's going to be a very well-received show. But they need to make sure for the fight scenes to keep it more grounded like the Netflix stuff, because the CGI wonkiness is not a fan. I'm not a fan of it. And like I said, I get they're trying to do the comic book accurate thing, but the issue is that with it being comic book accurate, you're already in an established canon where Daredevil is older than he was before, and when he was younger, he was just doing normal fighting and no crazy acrobatics. Now, if you want to use the acrobatics and the CGI for him swinging on his billy club, that's fine, but I'm saying the fighting part should still be grounded. And it's difficult to go from an established lore of Matt Murdock fighting on a ground level, you know, like normal martial arts stuff, to this CGI wonk fest with him being older. You're playing with established canon, and it looks out of place because in your established canon, he wasn't able to do that before. How's he able to do it now? I know, budget, yeah, that's the reason, but in canon, it doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't look as good either. But only time will tell to see if Daredevil Born Again gets better. But thank you all very much for watching. I will be doing another podcast, definitely within probably the next week now that I got a new setup and everything's moving very smoothly. So I will be doing another podcast. Sadie Sink just got casted in Spider-Man 4, so we're starting to get some Spider-Man news. So we'll be discussing stuff like that, predictions for Daredevil episode 4 and stuff like that. So there will be another episode out either by Sunday or Monday, because I got to talk about, of course, a prediction. So within the next 2 days, there'll be another podcast out for sure. Mostly speculatory stuff and discussion based. But without further ado, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one, and God bless.